Good morning, dear colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for their kind invitation to speak here about the fourth millennium. And I start with the transformation of knowledge, which David Anthony mentioned. When I started studying prehistory, prehistoric archaeology in 1980, there was still a great deal of confusion about chronology. The corded-ware and bell beaker cultures were dated into the first centuries of the second millennium BC. It was only with the calibration of the 14C data that it became clear that the corded-ware began in the early third millennium and the bell beaker culture after the middle of the third millennium. The fourth millennium did not exist in its present form. It is an unfinished task to work on the dynamics of the regional archaeological sequences and the interregional connections in the fourth millennium. Bioarchaeological research again is a tremendous enrichment that is fundamentally changing the picture of European prehistory once again. Archaeology has not yet begun to combine these new results with existing knowledge. We are long away from differentiated narratives. One of the most important results is undoubtedly the evidence of migrations from the Eurasian steppe region and their effects on the cultural conditions in large parts of Central Europe. Evidence of the plague as early as the late 4th millennium BC and many other diseases is also a factor to be taken into account in the future for the reconstruction of demography and economy. In contrast to the third millennium, the fourth millennium is first of all very diverse, almost confusing, often not very visible. Ergebert Rutkay once said, "The fourth millennium was somehow enigmatic." This makes it all the more astonishing that a large number of key technologies emerged in the fourth millennium. We start with new weapons, the base for this many wars in Eurasia in the time. Then metal alloys, which makes the soft copper hard. New metals like the silver, wheel and wagon were invented. The sheep woolly sheep was probably breeded in the fourth millennium. The beginning of horse domestication is visible. Stele were the new media of the mighty persons, as well as new political organization emerged, like cities and states. The vine was cultivated as well as the olive, and not last but not least, the writing was invented. From the technological point of view, the fourth millennium was a watershed. This is true for the development of social organization as well. So the characterization of the fourth millennium did completely change in the last 30 years. The connectivity between the Caucasus and Central Europe is not surprising. There are no natural barriers to overcome, no mountains, just the plain and the rivers. That is why we find the same symbols like same symbols like this tree of life on the Crimea or in the famous grave of Züschen in northern Hesse. In the case of the African swine fever, We can understand this also in the case of such a disease, how it developed since it started in a Western Georgian harbor in Poti, then crossed the mountains to the North Caucasus, and then relatively fast reached the Baltic Sea, and now it's at the Polish-German border, and here in Belarus everything is okay. Yes. Connectivity can also be shown with human DNA. During the 4th millennium BC, the northwestern Pontic region experienced intensified contact with steppe Neolithic groups, while these in turn also had contact with groups in the North Caucasus, such as Mycop, all of which are mirrored in the genomic data presented in this paper, which came out in the last summer. Moreover, despite to close geographical proximity to the Ukrainian sites studied, we were able to trace different admixture histories. So, for example, the heterogeneity of individuals from Kartal stands out, which is located in the Danube Delta at the northern end of the former distribution of the KGK-6 complex, and that represents the transformative nature and dynamics of the 4th millennium BC in action. By contrast, the more homogeneous Mayaki and Usatovo groups, probably Igor Mansoura will speak about that, located north of the Dniester River, show that such assimilation processes had already occurred, suggesting that contact and exchange between transitional foragers and early pastoralist groups from the forest steppe zone and non-local Southeast European farmer-associated groups had started already in the late 5th millennium. The archaeological findings, for example, of this prestigious shaft-hole axis and the belonging sets of tools show already an interesting point. The deposition of these axes is already differentiated in the Caucasian model. These axes were parts of grave inventories. In the Southeast European model, they were part of depositions for the gods and the ghosts. Today, I would like to show how the preconditions for the Yamnaya migration were developed also in the 4th millennium, because such a migration is in itself an endeavor based on various technical conditions. In 1897, the St. Petersburg professor Nikolai Veselovsky excavated a 10 meters high burial, from which is nothing preserved, but Piotrowski could locate it on a map from 1857, and nowadays there is a very strange monument remembering this fantastic mount, which were the chamber of 3 persons, and the main burial was equipped with a lot of things which we can understand as golden insignia, like the golden chain of office. Here we can understand these lions as part of a king's mantle, and we can emphasize also this king position of this person with the scepter. The There's also a number of silver, gold, and bronze vessels, as well as some weapons and tools. For Child, the rich finds from these graves were, of course, the result of Mesopotamian influence. And the impact of Mesopotamian civilizations on clans living near Caucasian ores must account for the emergence of the chiefs again. And this is still one of the main narratives also in Russian archaeology. Unfortunately, no organic remains from the Mykop grave are available for radiocarbon dating. However, a time frame from 3600 to 3000 for the construction of such tombs can be deduced from comparable tombs. One of the largest burial mounds, Orvan in Kabardino-Balkaria, around 25 meters high, is very early in the 38th century. And it comes from a deep looter's shaft which were dug in here some years ago. So the chronological position of the Mykop grave changed dramatically, and it is now for sure more than 1,000 years older than the famous graves of Ur, which were for Child and others, of course, the main comparison for the Mykop grave. Nevertheless, there's still the idea that Uruk is a cradle of civilization, so to speak, and the idea was also always repeated by Andrew Sherrod in such a map with the different arrows, that there was a Mesopotamian center and the barbarian periphery. In our first paper, together with Wolfgang Hack and Johannes Krause from the Max Planck Institute in Leipzig, we were able to show that there was no mass immigration from the south, from the Mesopotamian center, at the time of the Mykop culture. The population in the Piedmont zone is an admixture between Anatolian Neolithic farmers and Caucasian hunter-gatherers and Iranian Neolithic, which can be traced back into the 5th millennium, when the first farmers from the south arrived in the North Caucasus. You can see this here. And the most interesting point was that the Mykop culture, the people were divided into the people from the Piedmont zone here and from the steppe, also genetically, and there's no overlap. The Mykop people in the Piedmonts are a mixture of Anatolian farmer and Caucasian hunters, and the genetically different group in the steppe can be described as an admixture between Eastern hunter-gatherers and Caucasian hunter-gatherers. So one culture and two genetically different people, which is also not a Cosina smile, but something else. Yeah? The comparison between the Y chromosome haplotypes show that there was already a different social organization of reproduction between these different groups. And I want to go into just a short overview about three main innovations: wheel and wagon, the sheep breeding, and the horses. Going back to northern Hesse, to the famous grave of Züschen, we find here a great number of interesting signs which are showing the oxen team with a wagon or only the oxen team. So a U and a vertical line is the oxen, and then here a joke and the wagon. These signs were widely distributed, which became clear first when they were found also in the Montbégot area in southeastern France. They are distributed in similar graves in Westphalia, but also in the Kamyana Mohila in Ukraine, which is nowadays occupied by Russian troops. But it can also be found in Armenia, in this very famous site of Suyunik. In the steppe area, we find a lot of graves with wooden wagons, like this one from Sharach al-Sun, dated into the last quarter of the fourth millennium. The dead person is still on his wagon, and he was considered as one of the earliest persons who were learning how to control the wagon, because he had a lot of fractures which were considered as typical for wagon drivers. In the Piedmont zone of the Caucasus, wagons seem to be not to exist, and a change of our knowledge is grave Marinskaya 5, grave 25, with these bronze rings, which were considered as symbols of the Mesopotamian goddess Ishtar. And 2,000 years later, also this grave is dated into the last quarter of the fourth millennium. In Marinskaya, 2 skulls of oxen were found outside of the chamber, still in connection with these rings, and so it became clear that they were used as nose gags, quite painful methods to control the animals. What does it mean? We have here a zone in the steppe where the deceased were buried with a wooden wagon, and the oxen team could be reused. In the Piedmont zone, the blue small dots, the oxen team was slaughtered and the wooden wagon was preserved. It's a cultural difference which matches with the genetic difference of the steppe and Maikop, as I shown before. When, where, and horse was domesticated has long been the subject of research. The paleogenetic study by Ludovic Orlando and his team now sheds light on this matter, and it is clear that we have 2 domestication processes, and the real horse, which we are still use nowadays all over the world, was named DOM2. And the interesting point for us was that the oldest ancestor of the DOM2 horse, like this one, was found in a kurgan from the second quarter of the fourth millennium in Aigursky II, and in the steppe north of the Caucasus, a burial of a 2 to 3 years old child with which had some beads, a vessel, and 9 different bones. One of these bones from horse, which shows already traces of domestication. And so the three animals on this famous cup from the Mycop burial could show that the horse was already one of the king's animals beside the bull and the lion, which are also shown on the vessel. Next point, the sheep and the milk. So we know it's very very healthy, the milk, but mostly not very tasty. But there are many methods for fermentation to convert the milk into yogurt or cheese, and which is also a basic requirement for carefree consumption for all people who have problems with lactose. And there was still a long debate on when does it start, the milk, the cheese production, and so on. But I want to stress one study together with Tina Warriner and Ashley Scott, in which our material from the North Caucasus were introduced, and the proteomic analysis could find out that milk consumption was widespread in the North Caucasus from the 5th millennium onwards, and they found milk proteins in 26 of 27 individual studies. Dairy products were consumed in the North Caucasus since the 5th millennium onwards. And it is very interesting that in the earlier part of our sample, from the 5th millennium until the early Yamnaya, only the sheep milk was used. In the later parts of Yamnaya and Katakumb, also goat and cow milk were used for dairy products. So this is clearly, once again, a good argument that even everything people could do, they do not. In a study from Niki Beauvin and others, the authors came to a similar conclusion. However, the title of the paper, Dairying Enabled Early Bronze Age Yamnaya Steppe Expansion, is only partially true. Dairy practices are more than 1,000 years older than the Yamnaya expansion, and probably they enabled the Yamnaya expansion because it helped to solve the logistic problem to feed people during their migration. But it was in general important. Cheese was a new foodstuff in the 4th millennium, and it was storable and transportable. It is a huge step, considering that actually the whole history, prehistory, was characterized by glaring lack of food. And here you see some of this, the white cheese and so on. And here, this is a special cheese. It is named curd, and you can store it years, and it will help to feed you, which is still used in Central Asia. So, no. The analysis provide a basis for further consideration of herd management and dairying. And this is an essential element of the pastoral economy of the early Bronze Age and the later periods in the Eurasian steppe, for which certain elements played an important role. The cattle-drawn cart for transport and the domestication of horse to control larger herds. And another question is whether this early dairy economy may have involved the use of sheep for wool as well. It's a combination of 4 different innovative techniques for an innovative new economy, which then became the basis for the societies between Caucasus and Carpathians for the next millennia. Thank you very much for your attention.